Hello everyone! Okay, so I'm going to make a video today to talk a little bit about if I thought the program I took at Western Governors, which was the Masters of Curriculum and Instruction, if it was worth it. And so I'm going to break this down into 6 kind of key areas or key categories, just to give a well-rounded perspective. Okay, so the first category is time and flexibility paired together. Most people that take a Western Governors program will say that, of course, time is really a benefit here, time saving, if you're able to do it within the suggested amount of time, which is about 1.5 years for a master's or under. For me, of course, time was a huge factor of why I chose this program, but that is because I feel I'm efficient as a worker. I also feel that I am strategic with my time, and I also have a lot of experience teaching and being a student. So at this point in my academic journey, I'm ready, and I was ready to do something where I could accelerate. If you are new to self-directing your learning, if you are new to managing your time as well as the complexities of other parts of your life, such as work and family and whatever, this may not necessarily be the program, because I find that online learning is not easy for those who procrastinate a lot and who don't really have the skills to manage their time. What I would suggest is for you to look at refining and developing or optimizing that time management skill before coming into the program so that you can get through the program with ease. Now, for example, I took other online courses in the past as part of other programs, and if they weren't designed very well, the courses, or if I wasn't really focused, it was very hard for me to get through them. And there are even programs, like very low commitment learning programs, like Coursera courses and whatever, that I never completed just because I could not get myself motivated to do them. But for me, time and motivation go together. If you are motivated to get this done in 1 year under, or even 1.5 years, this could be a better commitment than doing a brick and mortar, which could take 2 years to do a master's or longer. Now, time and flexibility go together because as you are able to save your time, you're able to actually allow for more flexibility within all of your life. But I would also say that the flexibility comes in other ways as well. So I'm able to basically curate my learning experience because I don't necessarily need to go through every bit of coursework material. And that is not necessary as part of competency-based education. I was able to select what I wanted to learn. So let's say I didn't know a lot about a certain topic. I would go deep, and then I would kind of pull out and say, well, what do I need to know about that to do my assignment? The assignment is very structured, so I just kind of pick what I've learned from the learning materials and apply it directly. So that process I find is very streamlined, and therefore it's very efficient. I'm saving time, and the flexibility is, again, me picking and choosing what to learn. There are other programs I've done. I did part of it, about 40%, and I could not get through it because even though it was online and self-directed, they required you to basically hand in assignments on this specific day, to do weekly posts on these specific days, and I found that it was very forced. I had to make posts that I didn't necessarily want to do. It felt like a lot of busy work, and in that case, even though it was online, it wasn't flexible, and I was spending too much time on these weekly posts that I felt weren't really helping me. In Western Governors, you are focusing on the final assessments, which are the performance assessment and objective assessments, and I find that they are honing my learning to like the main nuts and bolts of that course, which I appreciate. So the next category is finances. I find that most people will tell you that, of course, Western Governors is a good option because it's inexpensive if you are able to do it within kind of 1 year or less. Now, even if you did it in 1.5 years, I think that would be equivalent to some master's degrees based on the calculations. So for example, for me as a Canadian, it was more like $4,000 a term or a little bit more. Now, because I was able to do it in 6 months, like that is the most bang for your buck, I guess you could say, because, I mean, you're paying $4,000 for a degree. Now, a lot of people can't complete the program in 6 months. I think there's this misconception that because a lot of people online talk about getting the program done in 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, that everyone can do it. But, when I talk to the program mentors, when I've talked to the enrollment counselors, when I've talked to course instructors, they say it's not very common that people get it done in that time. But I still think if you were able to get it done in a year, a master's degree, that still would be, you know, let's say $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, depending on the exchange, which would still be less than a conventional master's degree, even if it was an online master's degree. So in my mind, it is worth it because you can save money. But again, it goes back to my first point is if you're not self-directed and maybe not the most time efficient person, it may not work to your advantage. And it's very possible that, you know, you may not be able to finish the program because of certain challenges like procrastination and time management issues. Now, the third category is learning opportunity. So I feel overall that I learned more in this program, in this master's, than I did in my previous master's. Even though my previous master's, I spent 2 full years doing it and doing more work. There's a main reason for that. I feel that the programs are designed by people who are experts in online instruction and basically educational design. And so they think about the curriculum as a whole. So someone designed curriculum and instruction in a sequence of courses that strung together and that led to this research focus. And those research courses is primarily where I learned the most. You know, I did a previous research degree, but I didn't learn all these research methods and learn them in a way that gave me that objective assessment to learn the foundations and then practice it through those preliminary research courses and then do a big investigation in the capstone. So I feel like the systematic approach to how the courses are sequenced allowed me to learn in a way that made logical sense. Like it made sense why I was going from one course to the next to the next. I do feel that because I'm learning less, I'm learning more. I know that sounds strange, but sometimes when you learn too many theories, too many different principles and too many different concepts, it can just get muddled up in your mind. But because the performance assessments are very kind of focused in on certain parts of, let's say, curriculum theory or curriculum evaluation, I'm able to kind of hone in on that and learn it quickly and then keep it in my mind. Now, for those who are grinding out those objective assessments by, you know, cramming, I feel like that information won't stick as well. But for me, I did one objective assessment and I found that a lot of it has stuck. Like when I look back at what I learned and I think about it, it's still there. And I think part of that was being very mindful of how I was studying. So learning isn't just like, oh, someone fed me information and it just sat there and it stuck into my mind. It's how are you recalling that information and then keeping it active in your mind. And for me, it was really important to learn the information by way of active recall and spatial recognition, which I talk about in my video on the Research Foundations course. So I would say that I did learn, it was worth it in the end, what I learned, and I was able to apply that learning to my job because so much of the performance assessments in this program, and probably a lot of the education masters, is taking what you've learned and applying it to your teaching job. For example, they might say, okay, differentiated instruction. Let's talk a little bit about like some different methods of modifying the instruction, and then you can relate it to your own teaching environment. Now, there are some scenarios, some courses where you do focus more on case studies, so therefore it's less applicable, but it's still applicable because it's within education. So I feel like I have remembered a lot, and I've also learned a lot that is useful. It's information that I feel will actually benefit me. Learning about the theory, learning about how to design curriculum, learning about how to evaluate it, that's a very well-rounded perspective on curriculum studies. Now, was it deep? Did I go super deep? No. So therefore, it's up to me to decide if I want to advance that learning on my own. But I feel like I've gained enough knowledge that it's kind of set me into my next layer of expertise within education, which is what I was hoping for. I wasn't hoping to know everything about everything within curriculum instruction. I was hoping to get more knowledge, and I did. Okay, so the next one, we've kind of talked about this, is career advancement. So that learning has helped advance my career, I would say. For example, I was doing an audit or kind of an investigation on the curriculum that I was designing as part of one of my roles. It was particularly in student services where we created this online learning platform. And as I was kind of doing an audit of like the different learning objectives and you know, if the learners were learning what was intended to be learned, I was able to kind of go back to some of the learning material I gained at Western Governors and actually reference it. I actually showed some of my colleagues and I was kind of saying, hey, like maybe we should look at how to align our curriculum better. And I was saying how I learned about that. And so I felt like it advanced my career by basically advancing my skill set. Did it advance my career as in I got more money and I was able to gain a different job? Interestingly, yes, it did. And I don't think that is only because of Western Governors. I think it was happenstance that there was a job opening that was a higher level role that I'm in that did actually relate to curriculum and instruction. And I was applying to the job while I was finishing my degree. So I was able to put that degree on my resume. And then I actually talked about that degree in my interview. And they were quite impressed because, you know, I already had another master's and then I have this master's. But they were really impressed by the fact that I had gained kind of a new credential in the area. And I don't think that that was the selling feature. I think that was just additive to my portfolio of experience as well as kind of some of my other credentials. So I think it's if you think about like a soup, you know, and you just think about, you have the broth, which is kind of you, and then you're adding to the broth, which is all these different, you know, certificates and training and expertise and skills development. You're just adding to the soup. So you're adding peas and carrots and meat and whatever you want to put in there and spices. And I think one really special ingredient was this degree. And, you know, they weren't familiar with competency-based education, so I was able to talk about that a little bit as well with my manager outside of the interview. She wanted to know a little bit about it actually before the interview. I kind of primed her a bit and said I was doing this program and she wanted to know more and she thought it was interesting. Okay, so another category I'm going to talk about, this is the 5th category, is impact on others. So like I've talked about in career advancement, is I gain these skills by looking at kind of new frameworks, new ways of looking at curriculum instruction based on some of the theories. And I was actually able to bring that to my team that I work with and kind of inform them a little bit. And so I do feel like it impacted them directly. For example, it was very clear to me that, you know, we hadn't really thought about our ideology. So we designed all this curriculum, but for what reason? Was it are we trying to make change in the students? Are we trying to make them work ready? Are we trying to get them to be more self-directed? Are we trying to make them more academic in their thinking? Like, what are we trying to do? And I don't think I would have taken on that lens of perception without having to write so much about curriculum theory and instructional theory and just looking at the bigger picture within my assignments. So by bringing this to their attention, I think it's possible it informed them in a new way. Now, I work with students as well, so that is my student center role, and I also teach. And I can honestly say that it made my curriculum last term more rich, or richer, I guess you could say. I was doing things with intention. So for example, when I was designing instruments or different tools to evaluate the student learning, I was actually kind of referencing some of what I learned in that course, Assessment of Student Learning. And they talked a lot about data-driven decision-making or data-driven assessments. So I was then kind of thinking, well, I should look at the data that the students have offered me and really start to make decisions around that. And before, I kind of knew about that approach. Is yes, you have data, you can examine it, but it just didn't feel relevant, but it also just it felt like unnecessary. But once I was able to start thinking about data in a new way, data-driven decision-making within the assessment and the evaluation of curriculum, it just became more clear, like, this is important and I need to actually take the time to do it. Sure, it takes more time, but it has better outcomes because then I'm actually assessing what I'm trying to assess. And not only that, if I am assessing what I'm trying to assess, then I'm able to have better learning outcomes based on the students' outcomes. Also, I work with other teachers in the university, and what I recognize is teachers who aren't trained in curriculum and instruction evaluation are generally just kind of creating it arbitrarily, curriculum, if they don't have standards within their school. So I was talking to other instructors and they were just kind of like, oh, let's add this assignment to our course because it's going to be fun, or let's do this. And then I kept saying, well, how does that align to the overall course objectives? And so I started to kind of very gently talk about this as, oh, you know, like it might be beneficial to align it to the course objective because of blah, 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 blah. And then she started to think about it in a different way. So I will say that it has impacted my colleagues in my student service role, it's impacted student performance, and it's impacted teachers. So I do think it's worth it in that way. The final category is life experience. Was it a rich, interesting life experience? I will say yes and no. I will say yes in the sense that the fact that I could do this program in 6 months made it really interesting for me to see if it's possible, and it was, and also to document this experience online. So that was really interesting. The courses were interesting, but I don't think that they were as dynamic as being in a classroom with a lot of creative people that have like these big discussions, because a lot of the learning at Western Governors is very independent. Now, the way I combated that issue of not collaborating with other people as much was I really made an effort to email my mentor kind of every week or two, as well as I did book with my course instructors, which I've talked about a lot. Is I could have done this program without them, but I just found it was more interesting and more rich of an experience to talk to them, to get their expertise. And I found that my learning was way more developed when I had those conversations with them. Without those conversations, I was kind of doing a lot of my own guessing of what the evaluators were looking for in the performance assessments. But also I was able to just really bounce ideas back and forth between someone else and me and someone else. And I found that that was really added to the life experience. I would say it's more like an academic experience. A life experience, probably not as rich as going to school. Like I didn't really have a student group that I was involved with. I didn't do TAs, I didn't do research assistantships like I did in my other masters. You know, I wasn't really as connected to the department as I was in my previous masters, where I knew there was a lot going on and I wanted to be involved in it. I don't think it was like the most amazing life experience, but I don't think it was a bad life experience, and I still think I'm really glad that I did it. And maybe that's a good way to close off, is to say I am very thankful that I found Western Governors and I did this, because I do think, in summary, it was very time efficient. It was inexpensive for me doing it in 6 months. I learned more than I was hoping to learn, because I was able to apply a lot of learning through those 31 different performance assessments. I ended up advancing my career, impacting myself and others in the process. And then, even though it wasn't the most exciting life experience, I still feel like I made it interesting by connecting with some of the people at Western Governors. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how I interpret the worth based on my experience. You'll have to do the same. Maybe this gives you a bit of a different perspective if you've heard other kind of perspectives, like maybe not so positive perspectives, because I believe that my summary is quite positive. Would I do it again? Yes, and I probably will be doing it again. I'm looking into the Learning and Technology program, so subscribe to know if I'm going to be doing that, and I'll let you know if I do, I will be documenting that again. So thanks for coming and watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.